The Legend of Dragoon will never be forgotten. It's a game despite how much time passes, people refuse to let its legacy stay in the past. It's not uncommon for The Legend of Dragoon to very oftentimes find itself on lists of top 10 games in need of a sequel or a remake, very often ranking in the top 3. I would know. I'm one of those fans. But why? What is it about The Legend of Dragoon that captivates so many people? It still has such a dedicated fanbase to this day. During this playthrough, I attempted to ask this very question. In order to understand why The Legend of Dragoon has such a rabid fanbase, we'll first need to explore its simple yet complex gameplay, its characters, the world building, and the more complex story beats, analyzing the very mythology and philosophical ideas that inspired its story. So join me on an adventure across endiness as we uncover the truth about what makes Legend of Dragoon such a beloved cult classic and discover the truth behind the Black Monster, the Dragon Campaign, and the Moon that never sets in our Legend of Dragoon retrospective and story analysis. One of the things I like to do is dive into the development history to see if I can pull any information out about what inspired the developers and get a feel of what they were thinking when developing the game. There are very few developer interviews for this game. What we do have is comments from former CEO Shuhei Yoshida has talked about over the course of his 10-year career at Sony. It was an attempt by Sony to break into the RPG market to capitalize on the success of Final Fantasy VII. The Legend of Dragoon was described as being an epic RPG. Though not directly meant to be a Final Fantasy killer per se, it was an ambitious attempt by Sony nonetheless to break into the RPG market. With a budget of $16 million and development team of 100 people, it was a massive undertaking. Some interviews expressed how difficult it was to make the CGI cutscenes at the time. But I'd say the payoff was worth it considering it has some of the best cinematics the PlayStation 1 had to offer. Most of the team had worked on a few projects here and there, with perhaps the most notable being Yasuke Hasiba, who had previously worked on Super Mario RPG and Final Fantasy III as a battle designer. Unfortunately, this seemed to be one of the last games credited as he left the industry shortly after. Yoshida had also expressed that a sequel was in pre-production, but was eventually canned shortly after he left Japan Studio. Perhaps the most interesting choice was to hire Dennis Martin, a first-time game composer, to make the soundtrack. Initially hired to make the entire thing, he later got help from Takeo Miratsu, who had previously worked on the Jumping Flash games and a few anime. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2006. The two of them never met over the course of the development, but Dennis Martin expressed gratitude to work with the team. With a little development history out of the way, let's move on into the story of The Legend of Dragoon. YouTube, you're enjoying the video and want to see more just like this. There are also other links down below if you would like to help support the channel. Upon pressing the start button, The Legend of Dragoon wastes no time throwing us into the midst of a civil war between North and South Serdio. Emperor Dol has been vying for control over North Serdio for some time, and it seems he will stop at nothing to achieve this goal. We are immediately thrown into the conflict with a cinematic of an imperial army of Sandora invading into a small peaceful town of Celeste. In 90s cinematic fashion, we witness the village being torched to the ground as Sandoran soldiers ride into the village, with the backdrop of the nighttime sky as a somber but beautiful melody plays in the background. The sole purpose for this invasion was to capture a young girl from the village.
So, this is her. Put her in custody. Is this really necessary?
It is His Majesty, Emperor Dole's command to take that girl into custody.
Who is she?
That is not your concern.
A voiced cutscene. Well, that's an unusual sight. While commonplace now, in the early 90s, voiceovers were almost unheard of. This was due to the limitations of disk space needed to pull off such a feat, and video games not yet being seen as a respected art form yet, so voice actors weren't quite ready to put their reputation on the line when it came to voice acting a game. It was this same console generation we'd get Metal Gear Solid, which arguably set the standard for voice acting, and even with Metal Gear, many of those voice actors use pseudonyms to not hurt their reputation. If you think the voice acting is bad now, just wait, it's going to get much, much worse. The scene shifts to a backdrop of a forest as a mysterious woman overlooks the aftermath of the conflict in Celeste, when the green-tusked dragon Firebrand pops its head out of the trees. She's awestruck when she sees the Imperial Army has deployed the use of a dragon, wondering why a dragon of all things would be needed to invade such a small village. The scene shifts focus to Dart, our main protagonist. Dart makes his way back to Celeste after a long journey to hunt down the Black Monster, the entity who destroyed his childhood home and killed his parents. After a quick respite, Dart is immediately questioned by two Imperial guards. Before he can clash swords with them, however, Firebrand shows up. The mysterious woman in armor appears and rescues Dart from the clutches of Firebrand. Dart rushes off to his hometown upon her mentioning it was torched to the ground. It doesn't take long to see the devastation imposed by the Sondoran army. There is hardly anything left standing in this village aside from some buildings and graves. This backdrop really paints the picture of the harsh brutality of war, showcasing just how ruthless of a ruler Emperor Dole actually is. It surely wasn't necessary to torch the entire village to the ground just to acquire a girl, was it? Upon entering Celeste, Dart lays witness to two Imperial guards attacking a man. Shit, man, I forgot how hard this game packs a punch. These soldiers aren't messing around. After a quick fight, we're able to dispatch the Imperial soldiers. Dart immediately checks on the status of the villager. Barely hanging on for life, he tells Dart the Sondoran army broke the truce and attacked the village, kidnapping a girl named Shanna. Dart is immediately put on high alert after learning Shanna was kidnapped. Dart and Shanna were childhood friends, so Dart feels some regret for not being there to protect her. Shanna? Shauna? I'm going with Shanna. My mother's name is Shauna, so it feels wrong muttering her name over and over. Let's just get one thing out of the way. My pronunciation of these characters and places are my best guess. I'm not a Harvard-educated linguist capable of tracking back the etymology of such words. I pronounced the main character wrong in Final Fantasy IX Retrospective, and my family line will carry the weight of this mortal sin for as long as my bloodline continues. Dart immediately runs to the aid of a man named Ploss, helping him off the ground and moving his wounded body towards something he can lean on. It isn't long after Dart is ambushed by two Sondoran soldiers and a commander. After sparring off with the commander, we can talk to Ploss and learn Shanna has been taken to Helena Prison. So naturally, our protagonist is going to break into Helena Prison to rescue Shanna. Oh, a prison break-in scene. That's unusual. I'm usually one breaking out of prison instead of breaking in. Dart makes his way through a small forest just outside of Celeste. He recollects a time when he and Shanna were playing in the forest as kids, when a wolf appears and tries to attack Shanna. He immediately darts in front of Shanna, protecting her from the wolf as it runs off. Once outside of the forest, Helena Prison is only a small walk away. Now might be a good time to talk about the overworld map at this point. It was quite common for RPGs of the time to have a sprawling overworld map to explore. It had kind of become the staple at this point. Most of the time, it was possible for the player to explore and find secrets, whether it be hidden chests, small caves off the beaten path, or an intentionally set up dungeon just out of reach to remind you later on to come back when you have an airship. This was also used to show the lapse of time. You weren't really traveling from Celeste to Helena in one day, it was likely at most a 2-day trip. It's much like open worlds oftentimes use the same size and scope to follow similar design. However, the Legend of Dragoon has a distinct lack of exploration on the world map in general, making the game much more linear by design. The overworld is set up much like a level selector rather than a traditional overworld. Think of something like Donkey Kong Country, where the dots lead you to the next level. The Legend of Dragoon borrows heavily from this design. I'm not sure I'd call it a lack of an overworld map a flaw, more of a preference the developers chose than anything else. Remember, this game was worked on by former staff members who had previously worked on Super Mario RPG, so this idea likely became the next evolution of how they plan to evolve this type of style of game. This much is clear with how the combat also plays out. Don't worry, we'll be getting to the combat very soon. Entering Helena Prison, we can see why this prison is so feared. It's conveniently positioned on a giant pillar floating in the ocean with only one way out and one way in. It's designed to keep you in. Helena lives up to its reputation too. The name Hell in Helena is aptly chosen to name this place. It's dark, gloomy, and maze-like, and the head warden, I'm going with Frugal. He is a complete piece of shit with no regards for anyone but himself. Dart finds himself at the entrance of the prison with a merchant truck delivering goods. Sneaking around the truck, we can avoid the guards, and once they're done checking the goods inside, he's able to hop into the back of the truck and make his way in. Once we're inside, we can talk to the guards, which triggers him to call the guards. However, upon their defeat, he quickly apologizes and sells his goods, which we'll need to get out of this dungeon. A consistent theme in The Legend of Dragoon is its dungeon design. The game was made up by a competent crew of developers who understood good dungeon design. Though it lacks the platforming of other games at the time, it does make up for it in design. Oftentimes there are multiple paths you can take to acquire chests and items. These seem out of their way, but it's always nice to get rewarded for your desire to explore. As Dart makes his way into Helena Prison even further, he crosses blades with a knight from the Kingdom of Basil, Lovitz. Dart tells Lovitz what he's doing here, and Homeboy thinks he's crazy for breaking in. They team up to find Shanna and plan an escape. Making her way to the third and final floor, Dart and Lovitz find Shanna, who is more than happy to see Dart. Wanting to help him fight, Shanna finds a bow conveniently placed just outside here for her to use. Now, I'm no prison warden, but it's probably best not to sit a weapon in the area where your cells are. I don't know, just seems like a recipe for disaster if you ask me. Dart isn't too keen on letting Shanna fight, but Lovitz realizes she's been training to fight alongside Dart and did grow up a bit while Dart was away, reminding him she isn't a child anymore. Dart, Lovitz, and Shanna make their way back to the entrance and are stopped by Frugal himself. Frugal feels like our first real boss fight of the game, and he's accompanied by a couple of stronger wardens. We'll need to watch that HP of ours, but it's nothing a few healing potions can't handle. After we defeat Frugal, we steal a couple of horses and ride out of the prison in a blaze of glory, giving Frugal the middle giant finger as Lovitz gets some nice airtime jumping the drawbridge. As for the prison break scene, I give this an 8 out of 10. At least we didn't have to tell the warden the girls were bitten by a snake and proceed to punch the warden in the gut. With the prison warden hot on their tail, Dart, Lovitz, and Shanna bolt through the prairie trying to escape. Lovitz is shot in the leg by an arrow, with him brushing it off as but a flesh wound. They eventually stumble across a shack where Shanna applies first aid to Lovitz's wound. After crossing a river using a loose tree, they make their way through Limestone Cave and face off against a guardian called Eurobulus. This is clearly supposed to be Ouroboros, obviously, but the localization in this game isn't the greatest. More on this later. Dart, Shanna, and Lovitz begin to leave, but the snake gets up and attempts to attack Shanna. Before it can land a blow, however, a light emanates from Shanna within, destroying it. Both Dart and Lovitz are in shock, as is Shanna. She has no clue how this even happened. Dart, Lovitz, and Shanna make their way back to Bell. Lovitz lives here with his mother. It's just him and his mother since his father passed away. He tells us we are more than welcome to stay the night and have lunch, but Lovitz needs to report to King Albert first. Bell is the first town we really get a chance to explore, and it's surprisingly well structured with a lot to explore. The Legend of Dragoon is really good at setting up areas to explore, and towns are no different. We've got quite a bit we can find within the town and castle walls. After doing some decent amount of exploring, we'll make our way to the castle, and Lovitz reports back to King Albert. The king is relieved to hear Lovitz is alive and well after hearing reports he was captured. Lovitz introduced Dart and Shanna, and commenting without them he wouldn't have been able to escape Helena Prison. Lovitz makes a comment about Dart looking for some information on the Black Monster and asks Master Norsch if he can elaborate. He mentions he does not know much about the Black Monster, only that it came into existence after the Dragon campaign 11,000 years ago. So he tells us about the Dragon campaign instead.
As
as if they were gods. Winglies ruled over all living creatures and used them as slaves. The enslaved suffered a terrible domination and injustice. Their anger turned to a flame of fury. Then a gust of wind blew throughout the lands, spreading the flame to a blazing fire. The wind was Emperor Diaz. 7 incarnations of dragons served the Emperor. Their bravery inspired people to take up arms. Thus began the Dragon Campaign. It was a harsh war. Both people and Winglies suffered countless injuries and fatalities. After a long period of suffering, it was the humans who acquired the future. The age of humans had begun.
We stopped by Lovitz's house to visit his mom. She offers for us to stay for lunch. Shanna and his mother make sandwiches for lunch while Dart and Lovitz bro out. Lovitz and Dart have begun to form a friendship that will last for as long as they live. Lovitz shows Dart his room and his most prized possession, a shot of Indel's castle from the roof. Ever since he was a kid, he dreamed of becoming a Knight of Bel just like his father before him. The Legend of Dragoon does an extremely good job at fleshing out his characters, making them believable and pushing forward their own motivations. The Legend of Dragoon, for the most part, is really good at pacing and allows these moments to take place without trying to take away from the action. That's not to say those moments don't exist, but they feel few and far between when trying to keep the plot moving forward. Before we leave town, a woman named Martel bumps into us. She isn't too happy with us getting in her way. Despite bumping into us, she's being rather rude. We can talk to her and she asks us to keep an eye out for Stardust, a rock. If every single one of them is collected, they will supposedly grant her wish. She says doing so will be worth our time and she will reward us greatly. She will give us items for each specific amount we obtain, eventually giving us an item to beat the ultimate boss in the game. Stardust has to be one of the most annoying things in the game. Most objects you can interact with the Legend of Dragoon glow, but not Stardust, meaning you have to click every square inch of the game in order to find it. Luckily, they exist in towns and a few other places outside of that where random encounters don't really occur. Still though, without a walkthrough, it's insanely difficult, and you can bet your butt cheeks I used a walkthrough to get these. There was no way in hell I was going to torture myself finding all of these without one. Dart, Shanna, and Lovitz make haste to Hoax to help push back the Sandoran forces looking to invade the border of North Serdio. Dart, Lovitz, and Shanna report to headquarters to get a briefing on the mission. There has been no signs of the Sandoran Empire yet, but they do know they're planning on coming through the forest to the south. Shanna offers to cook dinner, but becomes offended when Dart says he doesn't care what she makes as long as it's edible. Lovitz and the commander agree. These men are singing my song. I'm not picky when it comes to food as long as it tastes good. Dart and Lovitz wait till midnight and relieve the guard from the upper outpost. As the night settles in, Dart makes a comment there isn't anything in the forest since you can hear the owls. As Dart makes his way down the stairs, the owls begin to stop and Dart runs back to the Sandoran army invading. It seems a bit soon, but whatever. Dart wards off a couple of soldiers himself while Lovitz handles some climbing up the wall. Dart and Lovitz take out an elite Imperial soldier, and soon after a Gigantos makes his way into town. Dart and Lovitz try to fight, but are bested in battle. The Gigantos named Kongol gets ready to kill Dart with his axe, but before we can, a woman who saved us from Firebrand earlier flies in, ascending from the night sky in a weird-looking armor and activates Dart's memento from his father. This turns Dart into a Dragoon, the titular title. He is able to push back Kongol and win the battle in Hoax. Dart collapses and wakes up the next morning. Kaiser tells us the 7th Fort has been turned into a bloodbath and we decide to go help out. But before we do, how about we hop into battle and activate the transition screen? And we can finally break down the Legend of Dragoon's combat system. Despite some minor flaws, the Legend of Dragoon's combat system still stands as one of the most engaging and unique I think I have ever seen in a turn-based RPG. If you were to ask me to sum up the Legend of Dragoon's combat system, I would say ahead of its time. While it follows the same turn-based RPG formula set by other turn-based RPGs of the time, it adds additions to combat. No, seriously, they're called additions. That's not a clever pun on my part. Additions engage you in the game's combat by timing button presses to string together attacks to pull off some cool looking moves. By selecting the attack command, you'll be able to attack with your equipped weapon, but the combat does have a few tricks up its sleeve other games do not. Each character, with the exception of Shanna, will be able to use timed button attacks called additions. Successfully pulling these off will increase the amount of damage you'll be able to do and fill up your SP gauge, letting you transform into a Dragoon. Enemies can also counter your additions, causing you to change up your button presses. Additions are executed with X, but during these counter sections, you'll need to press circle in order to successfully counterattack. With each successful addition, it becomes increasingly harder to pull them off. Time and practice are key here. You can make it through with level lower additions if you're struggling, but just won't do as much damage or gain as much SP, so it's not too punishing, but it is nice to be able to master some of the harder additions. Now, I did play this game on an emulator, so I'm curious if the timing was off on these because the game was optimized to play on a standard TV definition. So there might be some delay in my timing, just something to keep in mind if you're playing on a PlayStation console or, say, something like an emulator. Magic is handled in a couple of different ways, but unique to The Legend of Dragoon. While most RPGs either focus on a mage character able to use magic or specify a job class like many others do, The Legend of Dragoon allows all party members to use magic at all times. This doesn't mean that there aren't characters who excel at magic over others. For instance, Shanna and Maru are going to deal a hell of a lot more damage with magic than, say, someone like Dart or Lovitz, who are your heavy hitters, while Haschel and Rose more specifically sit in the middle, both being good at magic and physical defense. This is something you can probably incorporate into your strategy quite well. There are two ways to use magic. Since magic is specifically tied to humans only being able to use it through the Dragoon form, humans can't use it, at least not in the traditional sense. In order to use magic in human form, you'll need to use items. Yes, magic is treated as a consumable here, and I both hate it and love it at the same time. Using one of these consumables will sometimes, depending on the spell, prompt a button pressing sequence where you need to mash the button to deal damage. Pressing the button quicker will up the percentage, and your spell will be able to do more damage. You'll know how powerful it's getting as the spell will start to zoom in as it appears the spell is getting bigger and bigger. The highest I ever got was around 230. Some spells don't have a charge up or an option to make them stronger, they just seem to have a set amount when used. The drawback to this system, however, is inventory space. While it forces you to strategize a bit, you're going to need to decide if you want to focus more on magic or healing. Since you only have 32 spots to fill in your inventory for any sort of consumable, you're going to need to manage them. And while technically yes, you can use Shanna for healing, and Rose technically, but outside of Disc 1, that spell sucks, you're going to rely specifically on healing items outside of Dragoon form in order to keep healed. Guarding will also heal, but it's dependent on the enemy missing your character entirely, or how hard the enemy hits, and whether or not the character's heal they get from that can outpace the damage the enemy puts out. Because of this, and my ass not wanting to use Shanna because she didn't use additions, I prioritized healing almost always over magic. This meant most of the time leaving chests unopened, as I didn't just have inventory space required to keep these items. If you don't, you're basically forced to discard them, which can really suck if you wanted to keep specific items. Lastly, let's talk about how Dragoons function in battle. Starting out, you'll get one Dragoon level, but increase over time with each character able to reach level 5. When a character receives enough SP to turn into a Dragoon, their bar will start to glow, and a number will appear next to the bar indicating the level they are currently at. An option will then appear for your character in the menu to transform into a Dragoon. During the Dragoon phase, you'll be able to attack and use magic spells. Each character gets 4 specific spells to their element, with the last being an option to summon your dragon. Magic spells can be useful depending on circumstances, but sadly, consumables or additions are likely going to do more damage than Dragoon magic, rendering them pretty much useless. The time it might be a good idea to use is when an enemy has high physical defense but low magic defense. Since my main party was Dart, Rose, and Lovitz, I didn't use a whole lot of magic. Maru hits like a freight train, and I know many people who play this game often use her to dish out magical damage at a high rate. But that's the beauty of The Legend of Dragoon. It's letting you choose your playstyle, specifically how you want to play. Usually I start out by building up a Dragoon level if I haven't done so already, and then transform Lavitz to use Rose Storm for half damage, making some of those tougher boss fights a lot more manageable. Dragoon's attack, on the other hand, deal physical damage to an enemy. Selecting an attack option in Dragoon form will cause a circular display to appear with a notch at the 12 o'clock. By pressing the X button, a sparkle appears and you'll need to hit the X button at 12 o'clock on the notch to utilize an attack, if you do this 5 times. While the first 4 are pretty much hit right at 12 o'clock, you'll need to hit the final level just before 12 o'clock to successfully pull off a move of the combo. It takes some time to get used to, but you'll eventually get it. Depending on how many successful presses you hit will depend on how many attacks your character will do, the max being 5. If all party members have their Dragoon levels maxed out, then a yin and yang symbol will appear in each character's menu. By pressing this symbol, all characters will turn into a Dragoon, but the background color will change depending on the element when used. So if you use Dart, his will turn to use a fire element, and vice versa. This does 3 things: increases the amount of physical damage that character is able to do, increases the amount of magical damage that character is able to do, and will always give this character a level 5 Dragoon attack, meaning you don't have to press the button and land 5 attacks with that character. There are some drawbacks to using Dragoons, however. While magic damage and physical damage are decreased, some enemies do hit harder when a character is in Dragoon form, meaning if you have a character who isn't in Dragoon form, they are going to get pulverized when not in Dragoon form. There is also times when the game just outright negates you from being able to use magic. The boss fight with the second dragon, for instance, almost disincentivizes you using magic in Dragoon form for this reason. It's probably best just to go in with each character at level 1 at this point, and use spells or attacks if you want to let them morph in or out, continuing to use this rinse and repeat throughout the fight. Pick a playstyle that suits you and stick with it. With Hoax out of the way, and our next destination in mind, it's time we finally head to the 7th Fort. The 7th Fort is an optional area, but it does showcase how brutal this war has become. There isn't a single survivor here, and it's worth noting this is the only area in the game you'll find Stardust inside of a dungeon, so that's nice. With the securing of the 7th Fort, it's time to go fight the dragon. Dart and company make their way through the forest in order to reach the dragon's nest. They make their way through Volcano Villude and enter a fiery landscape. A firebird flies towards the volcano. We're going to have to fight this thing, aren't we? Trekking through the volcano, Shanna begins to hear a mysterious voice calling out to her. Following the voice, we come across a weird-looking creature. Rose identifies this as a barrage. These were wingly weapons left behind from the Dragon campaign. Though this one hasn't been fully formed yet, Rose does warn it still has an immense amount of power. After the fight, the party is perplexed Shanna was able to find it, much less be drawn to it and awaken it. What is Shanna's mysterious connection to this creature, and why was it calling to her? Better yet, why does Rose seem to know so much about these ancient creatures in the Dragon campaign? These mysteries are slowly beginning to build up and intrigue the player to move onward. Let's actually talk a little bit about this. The Legend of Dragoon's world building is actually very well done. While the story isn't as complex or filled to the brim with esoteric concepts and deep philosophical conundrums such as Final Fantasy VII or Xenogears was, what is offered here is an engaging story with a good amount of lore that keeps the player engaged. The Legend of Dragoon feels like it could have been adapted into a TV show, anime, or a movie trilogy. It makes me roll my eyes every time I hear someone say the story is generic, or it's not that deep, bro. Does every story ever made need to be some deep philosophical DMT trip revealing its secrets and morphing how you perceive the world? I enjoy those stories just as much as the next person, but sometimes it's fun to have a simple fantasy story about dragons, gods, and war. Not everything needs to be, nor should be, a life-altering experience. That said, The Legend of Dragoon does a magnificent job at building up its world and making it believable. It uniquely positions itself among many fantasy games, films, and books. Rather than falling into the same common tropes of elves, dwarves, and orcs like so much of other fantasy does, The Legend of Dragoon stands on its own 2 feet by creating a world that feels wholly unique to it. The further I got into this game, I began to realize how original some of these concepts felt, such as the Winglies or how the dragons were incorporated into the story. I'm not putting The Legend of Dragoon up there with, say, something like Lord of the Rings, but much like Tolkien was able to borrow from Norse mythology and Christian creationism, so too is the Legend of Dragoon able to do sort of the same thing, and it does have an identity that feels unique to the Legend of Dragoon for this reason, and I think this plays a huge part into why so many of us fondly remember the Legend of Dragoon. It has a world that just really hasn't been replicated by any other RPG. After the fight with the Virage, Dart and company backtrack through the volcano towards the exit, and yep, you guessed it, we gotta fight that Firebird, and oh man, we just fought a boss fight too. Thank goodness for us, there is a merchant we can purchase some items from just before we need to fight the enemy, allowing us to restock. That is one of the many convenient things about the Legend of Dragoon, is how it does conveniently place merchants in the area. This could have made the game needlessly padded, and constant backtracking would have bogged the experience down, especially considering you have to walk through each dungeon you've already gone through in order to get back to some towns. It does allow the player to think in terms of battle strategy instead of poorly implementing item management mechanics, so that was a nice trade-off. With Volcano Villude behind them, Dart and company makes their way to the Dragon's Nest. The dragon poison has affected the area and warped much of the plant life here. As we make our way through the forest, Shanna becomes affected by Firebrand's poison, needing to stop and catch her breath for a bit. Eventually, we make our way to the location of Firebrand. Joining Firebrand is a man named Graham. Once a Knight of Bell, he killed Lovitz's father and defected to Sandora. Lovitz, having a chance to avenge his father, gladly revels in this opportunity. Graham reveals he is a Dragoon, and the current master of the Jade Dragoon. This gives him control over Firebrand by making him his vassal dragon. They are able to successfully defeat Graham and Firebrand, bringing the war between North and South Serdio closer to an end. But a dying Graham begins to divulge why he killed Lovitz's father. Lovitz realized revenge didn't bring him the peace of mind he thought it would, but the dragon spirit picks him as its new master. Shanna is unable to withstand the dragon's poison and collapses. The party talks to the doctor in Lohan village, hoping to find a way to save her. The only known cure for the dragon poison is a plant called the Dragoni plant, located in a shrine just past the dragon's nest. But in order to get to the shrine, we need to kill off the plant in the forest that's currently blocking the path. In order to do this, we need to get some clean water from the spring and take it there, but we have no jar to put it in. Before we can leave, however, they are stopped by a merchant who conveniently is selling a jar. Shocker, I know. This dipshit thinks we're going to pay $10,000 for it. Good, keep it. And if you keep on refusing it, the dude will just give you the bottle for free. Don't pay this scumbag, it's not necessary. And this won't be the last time this guy tries to bargain with us either. Using spring water from the forest, Dart and company are able to kill the plant and make their way to the shrine. Every treasure chest in this place has been picked clean, with a note in the chest telling us to give up or make some smartass remark about the party continuing. You're going to need to take your time to explore this area and keep notes on some of the hints here to progress through the dungeon's puzzles. These aren't too complex, but it does have a level of breaking up some of the monotony just a bit, following some of the same basic gameplay patterns. I feel like a broken record at this point, but can we please bring back these kinds of puzzles to video games in general? I want to know who complained about them in the first place. Sure, not every puzzle is created equally, and moon logic does exist for a reason, but giving the players an incentive to solve puzzles adds another layer of depth to the gameplay and is welcome in a hellscape of games that feels so bogged down by repetitive and tedious gameplay loops. I think this has become a major problem affecting most modern games in general, by dumbing them down and trying to appeal to an audience of gamers not accustomed to these gameplay mechanics. It alienates fans who enjoys them and creates a game for no one. After solving the puzzle and making our way through the shrine, we are ambushed by a bandit named Drake. This must have been the guy leaving all the notes along the way. Drake thinks we are here to steal the treasure of the shrine. Despite the party telling him they just want the Dragoni plant, he doesn't listen to them and, well, we need to fight him. This is one of those gimmicky fights again, much like the Sandoran soldier from before. Drake will toss out bombs that can and will deliver a shit ton of damage to your characters, so it's best to destroy them quickly. This is one of those moments where magic really comes in handy, so using Dart's explosion if you have the opportunity to do so here is going to be a lifesaver, or using a consumable that hits all enemies is another great way to dispose of these quickly. On top of this, Drake uses these strings, putting up a barrier between him and you. We'll need to destroy these things before we can damage him. It doesn't help, he also has a lot of HP too for a boss at this time, so this is going to be one of the longer fights of the game. After a fight with Drake, the poor guy is on the verge of death. The Legend of Dragoon doesn't shy away from these moments. While our party is only doing what's good to help a friend, it doesn't stop us from killing these people for their own motives. Just then, a mysterious ghost appears speaking to the party. Rose recognizes her. Shirley was the master of the White Dragon Spirit. Well, I guess she technically still is, but she can't use it anymore because she's dead. There is no Dragoni plant here, and she tells us the only thing that will save Shanna at this point is the Dragoon Spirit. Shirley puts Dart and Lovitz through a trial of sorts where you have to answer these questions a certain way. This feels so needless, I'm not going to lie. I get why it's here, but this could have just been avoided. But whatever, we got the stone from Shirley, so we're able to move on. Before we move on, however, she does ask us to use the stone to revive Drake by drawing the power from the stone. With Dart's stone, we are able to heal him. Drake has protected her for years from many people who have tried to loot the shrine, so he wasn't necessarily a bad guy, just doing a favor for Shirley. With the way to heal Shanna, we rush back to Lohan. Dart takes the White Dragoon Stone and places it on top of Shanna, but before he's able to grab out his own to draw the energy from the stone to heal Shanna, a white light bursts out of the stone, healing Shanna and awakening her as the White Dragon Dragoon. Something big is beginning to brew. It's more than just a dragon and a civil war at play here. It seems the will of the Dragoon Stones are somehow drawing them together. With Shanna healed and some time to kick back, Dart decides to enter a fighting tournament to test his skills. Dart will be the only one participating since Rose, quote, is too good, and Lovitz can't because he's a Knight of Bel. There isn't much to these fights, and they do play out pretty much like a random battle would, but you're unable to use the Dragoon Spirit because it would cause too much commotion. The archer has a pretty nifty move here where his arrows are able to track limbs for a shot, but this is the only participant here really standing out. During the tournament, Dart meets up with an old acquaintance who he has traveled with from the past, a man named Haschel. Probably saying that wrong, so feel free to crucify me in the comment section down below. But Haschel is what we're rolling with. Dart expresses interest in fighting Haschel in the tournament, but he's lost to a skilled swordsman. The mysterious swordsman has superhuman reflexes, and no matter how hard you try, Dart will not be able to strike him with his sword. Eventually, the swordsman claims victory over the fight, and Dart wins second place, with Haschel trailing behind in third. After the fight, Dart introduces everybody to Haschel, telling them he and Old Man Haschel used to travel together on his journey to defeat the Black Monster. Lovitz congratulates him on his fight and presents Shanna and Dart with some tickets to attend some of the events around the arena. There really isn't much to these, but using all 3 tickets will give Dart and Shanna a little bit of time to spend together. Dart isn't picking up on the fact that Shanna has feelings for him, but my man is completely oblivious, still motivated by revenge and too blind to see his childhood friend thinks of him as more than just an older brother figure she's always seen him as before. Before we can leave Lohan, however, a soldier from Bel appears making his way to Lohan to deliver a message to Lovitz. King Albert has been captured and taken to Helena prison. Bel fell some time ago. In a mad rush, Lovitz is ready to rush to Helena. A brash decision to make considering they aren't prepared and the enemy will be on high alert. Dart and Rose are holding back a flustered Lovitz, and our hip energy Grandpa Haschel front flips over him and lands a KO punch straight into Lovitz's gut. When he comes to, Haschel has gathered some intel so he knows what's going on, allowing them a better chance to execute a plan and get into Helena prison. We need to rescue Albert and put an end to this civil war. Haschel decides he's going to help them out and joins the party. This is the second time we've had to bust into this prison. You'd really think they would have upped their security by now, especially since they have such a high-profile person in there, such as the king of the nation you're at war with, but hey, I'm no expert strategist here, so what do I know? They storm the front gate, making their way to the top of the prison with a scene flashing to Frugal and Albert. At sundown, Frugal decides to execute Albert by burning him alive. I know this is a thing from history and nothing new, but burning to death isn't the way I'd want to go. I feel like there's much less painful ways to die. They don't even want Albert dead per se. Frugal is just a sadistic bastard living for violence at this point. Dart and company become surrounded by some of Frugal's lackeys who drop them into a hidden passage into the bottom of the basement with no escape. However, there is a draft coming from a crumbling wall, appearing to be the only way out, but before we have time to investigate, Dart and friends encounter a giant monster down here. Yeah, if you're getting heavy Star Wars vibes here, you're not alone. The only thing missing here is Rose being captured by a sluggish Frugal and being forced to wear a bikini outfit. After a fight with the monster, we make our way back to the top, defeat the wardens who dropped us down there in the first place, and approach the top of the prison where Frugal awaits. Frugal was not too happy to see us, but eager to spill our blood. A couple of whip smacks and transformations later, Frugal is the one who is now painting the floor with his own blood. However, while Dart and company were busy fighting Frugal, a mysterious hooded man who looks an awful like one of Albert's visors extracts the moon gem from him and he collapses. Lovitz, in a panic, transforms into a Dragoon, charges the hood man who reveals himself to be Lloyd, the man from the Lohan tournament, brandishing a glowing sword that he plunges straight into Lovitz's chest and then flees. In a heartfelt scene, we watch as our ally, our friend, the man we've cultivated a bromance with, die before our very eyes, cementing the cold, harsh realities of war. Lovitz, however, was more than just a sacrifice. This wasn't something where he realized he had a bigger purpose. He died in the service of his king, fulfilling his duty. He was a hero, a battle-hardened soldier who had shown a great deal of strength and prowess in battle. Lovitz believed with all of his might he could kill Lloyd. Seeing that hood come off, he also knew and watched as Dart and Haschel fought him in the tournament, the capabilities of Lloyd and what he could do. Even with the Dragoon form, he was still not able to defeat him. Lovitz died so the rest of the party could understand even with Dragoon powers, Lloyd was going to be a formidable foe. With no other place to go, we make our way back to Celeste and find a small area to rest while the party mourns the death of their comrade and friend. King Albert is devastated by the death of his friend. They grew up together and were extremely close. It's decided with the death of Lovitz and Sandora losing power after the defeat of Feyrbrand, it's time to make our way to Kansas and put an end to Emperor Dol's tireless war. And, of course, Albert is now the new master of the Jade Dragoonstone that he inherited from Lovitz. Entering Kansas, we can see how desperate the situation is. Living conditions are not ideal, and most people live on top of each other. Many citizens seem to be struggling in poverty. For a man wanting to change the world and end oppression between races, he doesn't seem to care a lot about his own people. Talking to the commander in the room who was in charge of finding Shanna, he tells us to stop Dole. He hasn't been himself since the man in the black hood showed up. It seems Lloyd has been playing both sides of the war. He reveals he wasn't the one to order Celeste to be burnt to the ground, but that was actually Frugal who ordered that. How a prison warden has so much control over the military is beyond me, but it is what it is. After a trek through the castle, we arrive at Dole's throne. Kongal shows up one last time to stop us, but is unsuccessful. He begs Dart to end his life, but Dart refuses to do so, leaving him in anguish to face his failures head-on, and we press onwards to fight Emperor Dole. Albert asks his uncle why he killed his father, stating that the late King Carlo lacked conviction to lead, and he was a poor leader. This caused Dole to kill Carlo and try to take over Serdio. We have a classic tale of Hamlet going on here, a very common archetype when it comes to storytelling. Dole transforms into a Dragoon mid-battle. He's in possession of the Violet Dragon Dragoon spirit. After an intense fight with Dole, he is on the brink of death as a somber song begins to play. Dole seems to be himself again, no longer fueled by the hatred that once consumed him. Perhaps it was the Dragoon spirit amplifying those feelings, his views of the world and his convictions slowly starting to consume him. He tells us Lloyd is heading to the west to the kingdom of Tiberoa. If we want answers, we must follow him. The Violet Dragoon spirit glimmers, awakening a new master, Haschel. With a full party of Dragoons, Albert sets aside his duties as king and accepts his fate as a Dragoon, leaving his kingdom in the hands of his visor. It's time to make our way to Fletz, the royal capital of Tiberoa. Dart and party arrive at Tiberoa looking for any information they can find out about the moon that never sets and its connection to the moon objects. The party decides to check the front gate of the castle where Princess Emil is meeting with the commoners of Tiburoa. Emil is a complete bitch, an egotistical, self-centered princess who only thinks of herself. One of the commoners even goes as far to ask permission to name her daughter after the princess after she's born, which she is appalled at the very thought. She's really laying into this stereotypical princess here, isn't she? However, Princess Emil didn't always used to be this way. As a matter of fact, according to the citizens, she's only been this way for the past 6 months. Something happened 6 months ago that changed who she was. With no other option to get into the castle, we'll need to find somebody closely tied to the royal family who can get us in. If we go to the bar, we can meet a woman named Kathy who introduces us to a man named Fester, a scholar studying the moon that never sets. We have to pay this guy a visit to learn all the juicy plot details about the accursed moon objects and their connection to the Black Monster. Let's get treated to some awesome PS1 voice acting, shall we?
In astronomy, a moon that never sets cannot exist.
Cannot exist?
That's right. Stars travel the sky by catching the winds of time. But this moon isn't affected by time. It never moves day or night. That's why it's called the moon that never sets. After counting 108 years, when the moon that never sets glows red, a moon child descends upon the earth to fill the world with holy bliss. A poem of yore telling the fate given by the moon. However, what we really get is the spawning of destruction and fear, that is, the Black Monster.
Black Monster.
Why a demon, not a blessing? What does it mean? The mystery has yet to be resolved.
So every 108 years, the moon that never sets spawns a moonchild. This plot thickens, and I applaud the game for really trying to build its own lore and connections. I really think this plays into such a big part of why the Legend of Dragoon is so fondly remembered. Fester needs to leave and tutor Princess Lisa, Emil's younger sister. With the little information, we've decided it's time to go to Donau, the City of Flowers. We'll need to cross the Barrens in order to proceed to Donau. I really hope you begin to love this area because we're going to be traveling here a lot. Like, every time we need to traverse back and forth between towns, we're going to be crossing through the Barrens. This brings me to one of my first major complaints about the Legend of Dragoon. As the game progresses, it becomes more apparent that the backtracking can become extremely monotonous. While it's not even as bad as it is here in other late sections of the game, it really is just specifically this one area of Tiburoa that becomes extremely monotonous to continue moving forward. Even just the simple convenience of letting you skip an area you've already traversed would have gone a long way into alleviating the grind of this area. It's not long after we enter the Barrens, we encounter some thieves trying to take over Tiburoa. Among these thieves is a man named Mappy. After a quick fight with Mappy, he steals Dart's Dragoonstone, making off with it before they can get it back. Meanwhile, in Donau, we are introduced to one of the sacred sisters of Milia Sesu, Wink. Her name is Wink. Well, I suppose it's not any weirder than Dart, so, where was I? Oh yeah, Wink is attacked by bandits, and Lloyd shows up to save her from them. It seems Lloyd, despite conspiring something nefarious, isn't crazy about the bandits either. This adds to the level of depth to Lloyd's character not seen in JRPGs before. Instead of a man who just wants to attain the power of God to get what he wants in life, he does have a moral compass he follows, a very gray area, perhaps, but nonetheless, he does have convictions and motives that shape him into who he is. I'd imagine this was done to humanize him just a little bit, but it doesn't make up for the fact he's killed Lovitz. Dart and company make their way into the house of a woman named Kate. Her fiancé, Lynn, ran off to the thieves' hideout to negotiate with the thieves in hopes to convince them to leave Dunnow alone. Somebody get this guy a Dumbass of the Year medal, please. She asks if we can deliver a letter to the mayor, since she doesn't want to leave the house just in case Lynn actually does show back up. As I make my way to the mayor's house, a random NPC blocks my path. You cannot move unless you let them move out of the way first. Just a small nitpick I have towards this game. It's more annoying than anything else, but doesn't really take away from the game. We give the mayor the letter, and even he doesn't seem to want to get involved with the bandits, despite his son being captured by them. Even rescuing his own son is not something he's willing to do. Even his dad knows he's a complete dumbass. All jokes aside, it's because he wants no retaliation from the bandits, so instead the mayor decides to send us. It's convenient for us since we need to get back our Dragoon spirit. In order to make our way through, we'll need to pass through the Valley of Corrupted Gravity, a place left altered by the effects of the Dragon campaign. These people never come back from the Valley of Corrupted Gravity, so it's off limits. So how do the bandits get past it? I'm asking for a friend. Must be an old wives' tale meant to keep the locals from going there apparently, and Lynn didn't get the memo. Descending the stairs, bandits begin harassing a young girl. We watch as she beats the shit out of the bandits. This chick is not messing around. She introduces herself as Meru, and decides to join us as she also wants to rescue Lynn. Since we need a letter from the king, it's time we go back to Fletz and get an audience with the king. Fester has a connection to Princess Lisa, and maybe we can get an audience with the king. Upon getting the pass from the king, Dart and company are stopped as they leave the castle. Princess Lisa wishes to talk to them. Lisa reveals Emil changed a few months back when they were horse riding, and Emil fell off her horse, knocking her unconscious. When she awoke, she was completely changed, becoming an entirely different person. She knows this isn't who her sister is, and wants us to investigate, thinking perhaps the bandits have something to do with her sister's personality change. Lisa speculates whoever is in charge of the bandits may be trying to get their hands on the moon dagger, and this has something to do with it. Since we are heading to the thieves' hideout anyways, she wants us to investigate and find out what is truly going on. Somehow I think she knows the bandits are more than likely taking advantage of her sister falling off the horse. One of the Legends of Dragoon's greatest strengths, however, is the environmental looks and how well built the game feels because of this. Legend of Dragoon's environments just really do stand out. There was a lot of attention to detail that went into setting up a lot of these environments. It makes the world feel unique. Feels like each area adds to the lore and depth the Legend of Dragoon is trying to build. The Valley of Corrupted Gravity is no exception to this. The unique setup and nature of this dungeon, while awkward to navigate, feels so unique. Upon leaving the valley, Shanna is once again drawn to a presence she can feel, and awakens another barrage. This time it appears to be fully grown. This is part of why the valley's gravity has been altered to begin with. It is a remnant left behind by the Virage who resides in this area. It becomes very clear Rose knows more about what's going on than she cares to admit, though she is perplexed at why Shanna has a connection with the Virage in the first place. The bandits' hideout sits in the abandoned Gigantos home. Left abandoned, they must have used its various booby traps and structures to carve out a wonderful little hideout for themselves. It doesn't take long after arriving to be attacked by the bandits. However, after a fight, Haschel is shocked since the bandits appear to be using the rogue martial arts style of combat, martial arts training only passed down in Haschel's village of Rogue. Haschel asks them where they learned this, and they reveal that a man named Garrett taught them how to use it. Haschel instantly recognizes him as his pupil. The cunning old master breaks open the stone door the bandits used to keep us out. Using this to his advantage, he tells everybody he overexerted himself and wants to relax because his poor old back hurts. While they explore the cave, he knocks out Meru and makes his way further into the hideout alone. Dart and the rest of the party follow him into the hideout, confronting Mappy and Garrett together in a fight. This fight feels like it goes on forever. Both of these enemies have very high HP. It's one of those fights that feels like you're putting everything you've learned to the test. After a fight with Garrett, the pillar collapses from Hashield punching Garrett into it. Before the pillar can hit the party though, and crush them, Kongol appears, stopping the pillar from squishing our party. Garrett tells them 6 months ago the bandits, along with a woman named Lennis, swapped Princess Emil out, with Lennis masquerading as a princess, and apparently they've hidden Emil somewhere inside the castle. Making our way down to the hidden room under the throne, we can finally rescue Lyn and get our Dragoon spirit back. Lyn apparently knew Garrett and, like clockwork, said the man had changed. It seems every event or plan Lloyd has set forth changes the people he works with. But why? Kongol decides to follow Dart and company because he finds Dart strong and wants to fight for a world where humans and other creatures can get along. His whole motives for joining continues Dull's vision. I do like this. Each character feels as if they're traveling with a party for a very specific reason. They're not given some bullshit task or some reason that they're just tagging along. Sure, some are better than others, and Kongol and Meru's reasons probably are less than stellar reasons compared to some of the other party members, but it still feels like these reasons are valid and authentic. It gives these characters a level of depth and history prior to them just joining the party. Really gives them motivations to flesh out their characters and allow them to do a little bit of growing throughout the game. With information on Emil's true whereabouts, we need to hurry back to the castle and update Princess Lisa on our newly discovered clues behind the mystery of what happened to her sister. Before we do though, we'll need to make a quick stop back at Lohan to actually acquire Kongol's Dragoon spirit. Remember the merchant from before trying to sell us that overpriced water jug? Yeah, he's at it again. And we can lower him down to a much more reasonable amount for the Dragoon spirit. He still wants a lot for it, but it will be definitely worth picking this up now, as if you don't, you're going to have to wait till the very final dungeon in order to acquire Kongol's Dragoon spirit. How he got it, who knows, but I accepted his offer and made my way back to Fletz. The guards have all been replaced by the bandits, and Lisa has been barred from attending her own sister's 20th birthday celebration as they hand down the moon dagger. It really seems Lennis does not want anybody interfering with her plan. We sneak past the makeshift bandits and climb up into Lisa's bedroom, learning she isn't sick like the guards told us, because of course not. Lennis is trying to stop anybody from stopping the ceremony from continuing, and she knows Lisa is onto her. Lisa tries to use her astral powers to locate her sister, but has no luck. Eventually, Dart and company make their way to Emil's room, and inside is a giant portrait of Emil. We've got some nice magic going on here as she's been sealed behind the portrait. Finally able to rescue her, the party makes their way to the ceremony but are too late, as the dagger is being handed down to Lennis and a fight ensues. This is another one of those fights that can be a pain in the ass, but keeping up on health and attacks, she will eventually falter. With nowhere to run, she attempts to jump off the balcony and flies away with a pair of wings. She is a Wingly, one of the mythical creatures from the Dragon campaign. After Lennis leaves with the dagger, and Zior realizes he's been buffaloed by his cloned daughter, he finally breaks the silence on the moon dagger. Legend says after the Dragon campaign, 3 kingdoms were established: Serdio, Tiberoa, and Mille Sesu. Each kingdom received a moon object upon their founding. We know Lennis headed off towards Elissa Bay. In order to find her, we're going to get a ship from King Zior though, and make our way there. It's off to the city of Donau once again to board the ship. Once on the ship, we have complete control over Dart. He decides to talk to Rose and ask her about the black monster. Rose doesn't say much, but only asks Dart what he would do if he found the black monster. Dart says he doesn't know, but he learned seeking revenge isn't the answer. This was something he learned from Lovitz watching him get revenge on Graham. Rose does say something interesting, talking about the stone and how it amplifies desires of war and such and revenge in humans, which explains why Dole and Graham were driven mad. Taking control of Rose, we can also talk to Haschel. He asks her why she is on this journey, and Rose simply responds by saying, "It's a nice break." Feeling he may have pried too much after she walks away flustered, we get control of Haschel and get a chance to get a flashback of him and his daughter. Haschel is training his daughter Claire, who has become frustrated with his berating and pushing her to become the best she can be. On one hand, Haschel wants her to take over the rogue school. Getting flustered, she punches out her opponent, knocking her out cold. She runs off, flustered at the situation since Haschel has been getting mad at her. He tells her to get out of her sight. Let's be real, Haschel was being a complete ass to his daughter. It's been 20 years since he first left the village of Rogue in search of his daughter Claire. He comes to the realization he hasn't done any growing since then. He's still the same way he was all the way back 20 years ago. Haschel decides to go talk to Kongal. After a conversation with Kongal ensues, he wants to know a little bit about Dole. Haschel suggests he goes off and talks to Albert, since Albert is Dole's nephew. Kongal instead asks Albert what friends are, and Albert gives this terrible description about what friends are. Albert decides he's going to go socialize and goes off to talk with Maru. She tosses a pillow at him when he walks in the door, telling him he needs to be more cool like Dart. Albert asks Maru what she meant when she said she could help out. Albert doesn't feel like she's taking this whole thing seriously and doesn't want somebody else to die again, and honestly, I can't blame him. After seeing his best friend Lovitz die, he probably doesn't want to have that weight on his conscience yet again. Maru decides she's going to go hang out with Dart, and this love triangle officially starts, with 3 women competing for Dart's affection. She decides they should go talk to Rose, but Rose comes off as cold as always when they do. Dart feels she might perhaps be hiding something. I think scenes like this highly depend on how invested you are in the story and characters we are playing. And personally, I do love times when video games just slow down and give us time to get to know the characters, especially when I'm invested in the world and their story. However, a small criticism, I do feel like the localization here may have not done these scenes the best justice it could have. This is just something the whole game suffers from in general. A ghost ship fast approaches, crashing into the Queen Fury, damaging it. The ship is made up of souls that seem frustrated with Rose. Why are these souls so resentful towards her is unknown. This is one of the more annoying dungeons of the game. Ghost ships in general just make for very irritating moments within games. I can't think of a single ghost ship I haven't hated throughout my years of gaming. After following the ghost of the captain, we can get the key and learn the ship was attacked by the Black Monster 18 years ago, killing the princess of Mille Sesu. The souls were unable to pass on because they were still trying to save the princess. The boss fight here is absolutely annoying, and unless you know the specific way to kill this boss fight, you could spend quite a bit of time here trying to focus on doing so. Luckily, there are some hints you do get on the ship, but if you miss those, you're going to have a hell of a time. The trick here, in order to kill them, you need to effectively destroy each of them at the same time, and then kill them all before the next turn starts. Getting them all down to red health and then using a strong spell is probably your best bet here. Once they are defeated, the ghosts see Shanna and are able to move on. That's weird. Yet another connection Shanna has with something that she seemingly has no recollection or memory of even being associated with this ship. As the ship disappears, we need to make our way back to the Queen Fury, but before we can, Rose and Dart try to jump to the ship, but fall into the ocean together. Rose lies on the cliff opening up about her feelings for Dart. He reminds her so much of her lover Zeeg, almost to an uncanny degree. A flashback ensues where we get one of the most badass scenes from the game, a cinematic CGI cutscene of the Dragon campaign. Wait, did she say Ballsack? No, she clearly said Belzac, but what a hell of a name. It's one of those localized names that is like, yeah, that probably sounded better in the language of Japanese than it actually did English. But the cutscene also does reveal that Rose was alive during the Dragon campaign. Our hot black-haired waifu is over 11,000 years old and a badass warrior at that. This explains why Rose knows so much and is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to world history. Eventually, Dart comes around and they find a young child nearby in the village of Ladera. The young boy's mother is sick and needs to head to the next town of Fueno in order to see a doctor, but the cave leading to Fueno is infested with monsters. Dart and Rose offer to take them across the cave, assuring they can get to Fueno safely. Dart and Rose reunite with the rest of the party and begin to plan their trek through the nearby cave to find Lennis and retrieve the moon dagger. After a quick trek back to Ladera to ask the mayor to open the gate, Lennis controls the dragon Regal, the blue wave dragon, and you guessed it, she's a dragoon. Lennis and Lloyd are talking and this woman clearly has a crush on Lloyd, but Lloyd isn't reciprocating those feelings back. Lennis hands the moon dagger to Lloyd and makes his way to Mille Sesu. This fight, if not prepared, can decimate an entire party. It's best to stay out of Dragoon form here for as long as you can as well, and only use them as a last-ditch attempt. A character like Meru or Shanna is going to be your best bet here, since magical items can hit like a tank with these two. Alternatively, you can just use Albert's Rose Storm to negate some of the damage she can do, taking out Regal as fast as possible. With the dragon defeated, Dart and company make their way back to Fletz, where the king holds a party for them for defeating the dragon. Dart feels like they failed since they didn't get the moon dagger back, but the king is elated they saved the kingdom from falling to bandits, saved his daughter, and defeated the dragon, blocking travel between other continents. After the banquet, Albert and Emil spend some time talking to one another. Albert is totally simping for Emil, and she's totally into it. The maidens fit Shanna into a dress so Dart and Shanna can spend the night together. It is within this moment Dart finally reciprocates some romantic feelings towards Shanna, admitting he sees her as more than just his younger sister-like figure. Dart and company end up in the seaport village of Faruni on the coast of Mille Sessu. A young boy has gone missing in the nearby forest looking for his pet wolf who ran off into the forest after attacking the mayor's daughter. In order to hunt the wolf, we need to talk to the mayor. The party stays at the mayor's house for the night. The mayor's daughter takes an instant liking to Shanna, who decides to sleep in the same room with her. The mayor of Fernie comments on she hasn't been happy since the attack. So he revels in the fact that Shanna is being able to at least bring some sort of joy to his daughter. Later that night, Haschel hears Shanna humming a song to her he's quite familiar with. It's a song his daughter Claire said she was going to sing to her child. Shanna tells Haschel she learned it from Dart, whose mother used to sing it to him. If you haven't put two and two together yet, yes, it is confirming that Dart is Haschel's grandson. Shanna and Dart are up top the roof reflecting on their journey, noting how the moon that never sets has played a major role every single area they've gone to. It's really the driving factor behind everything in their whole adventure. Everything revolves around the moon that never sets. Shanna collapses yet again to no one's surprise, and her role directly seems tied to the moon that never sets. The next morning, as they make their way to Leningrad, the capital of Mille Sessu, Rose and Maru decide they're going to go their separate ways to take care of some unfinished business. The party makes their way to Leningrad and talks to the bishop of the church. He tells them the legend of the Divine Tree, a mythical tree of legend said to have birthed every species on the planet of Endiness.
The Divine Tree is the tree of life. All life comes from this divine tree. In the beginning, nothingness filled the world. Then the Creator Soa descended from the sky. And his followers created the world. In the end, Soa sowed a seed on the earth. The seed soon grew to be a great tree. The great tree bore 108 fruits, and various life forms arose from the ripened fruits. Thus, 108 forms of life were created to fill the world. The Divine Tree completed its role, but the story says it is still protected by the signet of Soa.
After revealing more about the Divine Tree, we are immediately taken to the library, which holds many secrets of the ancient world. We can learn a lot about Endina's past and talk to our party members to do so. For instance, talking to Albert, we learn the creator of the world Soa made dragons a more powerful species but made them less intelligent to counteract that powerful nature they had. Almost as if a species being that strong and having an intellectual ability to facilitate their will of their own would have been a threat to the creator. We do get a little bit more information here regarding the Dragon campaign and the Black Monster.
There were 7 Dragoon warriors in the Legend of the Dragon campaign. Dragoons, reputed to be the incarnation of dragons. With dragons at their side, the Dragoons fought boldly. However, in the age when the legend was reality, the Wingleys dominated all, even the gods. The gods answered to dictator Melbu Frama's prayers and granted him ultimate power. But the power was abused. The earth of Saint Imperial Gloriano was scorched by the gods' fire and became ashen. The anger and sadness of the people was fuel for the Dragoons' cause. And at last they freed the gods. Without the gods' power, the Wingleys perished, and our age, the human age, began. Thereafter, the gods floated in the sky. For 11,000 years, they have been looking over the world as the moon that never sets.
Meanwhile, Rose is in the village of Neat, the hometown of Dart. We get a flashback from Rose 18 years ago where a dragoon-like figure shows up to destroy Neat. She reflects on the Black Monster needing to kill the Moonchild to stop the resurrection of God. At Neat, one of the sacred sisters of Mille Sesu is praying at the grave. Rose offers to make sure they get back to the Palace of Deningrad safely. This sacred sister, it is worth mentioning, is blind. Meru, on the other hand, visits the forest in which the Wingleys are living in. It appears Meru was a Wingley and was exiled from the village because she chose to mingle with humans. The Wingleys, after the Dragon campaign, have gone into hiding. Waiting at the gate is Meru's fiancé, Garhana. At least in this specific Wingley culture, I am assuming that arranged marriages are a thing. Garhana lets Meru in, and Meru is instantly ostracized for entering the village since she broke the code and left for the human world. Even her father won't talk to her. Her mother is a bit more warming but still accepts the code of the Wingleys, and everyone is on the edge anyways since the Divine Dragon has been more restless, causing the monsters of the land to become more aggressive. We just learn a little about the Divine Dragon being the king of all dragons, and he was sealed away under the earth. If the Divine Dragon were to awaken, the only two weapons that could exist to destroy him are the Dragon Buster Sword and the Dragon Block Staff. The Divine Dragon's going to awaken, isn't he? After the party reunites, we are finally able to make our way to the Crystal Palace of Deningrad. I really adore this place. A palace built into a crystal is just another one of those really cool touches the developers made to build their own world. It's so unique to the Legend of Dragoon. Before we can make our way to the palace, however, you guessed it, the Divine Dragon shows up and flies past Deningrad. At this moment, we meet another sacred sister, Miranda, the worst party member in the game. She's cold, rude, and overall adds nothing of value to the game. She only joins for one reason and one reason only, and this is because Shanna is about to leave the party for plot-related reasons. In the meantime, since the Divine Dragon has awoken, we need a way to defeat it. Rose begins to ask questions about the Dragon Block Staff. Since Lloyd has the Dragon Buster Sword, obtaining that is out of the question. At least with the Dragon Block Staff, we can subdue the magic of the Divine Dragon to stand a chance at killing him. Meru lets slip she knows about the Dragon Block Staff, but knows revealing the location is taboo amongst her people. Still, she decides to reveal it anyways and help us out. In order to get there, we'll need to make our way to the Forest of Winglies hidden in the Evergreen Forest. Shanna is called to the Signet in the Crystal Palace where she's lost control of her body. She has no recollection of how she even got here or arrived, but she seems to have a connection with this pillar. Unfortunately, Shanna loses the will to go on and stays at the castle, feeling as if she won't be useful in her current state to the party. The White Dragoon spirit abandons her and awakens in Miranda, who vows to carry out Shanna's wishes and see this to the end. Miranda at this point is just a replacement for Shanna, same gameplay, and nothing really changes between the two except for the attitude problem. With our newly acquired party member, it's time to make our way to the Evergreen Forest in search of the Dragon Block Staff. The Winglies aren't going to be very happy we're invading their land, that's for sure. Maru opens up a pathway to the Wingly Forest, and you can imagine the guards are not too happy with Maru as she has once again shown up, this time much less with humans. Winglies are not accustomed to seeing humans and view them as vile creatures, full of prejudice and hate, so you can imagine how the guards are hesitant. However, the party is asking about the Dragon Block Staff, and the Elder calls to meet them, with the circumstances with the Divine Dragon are dire, stating maybe it's time to set aside those prejudices aside and live side by side with humans once again. The Winglies and humans are going to have to fight together if they're going to take down the Divine Dragon, and I think the Elder just overall recognizes this conundrum as seeing it as the only solution to defeat the Divine Dragon. There is a moral message here I find endearing in how oftentimes it's the youth breaking down the archaic traditions and prejudices of the path to pave a new way for setting aside differences and getting along. Maru represents this, and the Elder sees Maru's train of thought as one the Wingly species is going to have to adopt sooner rather than later. It's far too easy to judge a group of people for what they've done in the past, putting those fears and prejudices on them, and not letting them grow as a result to show they've changed. Garana has also been put on probation for allowing Maru into the forest during her first visit there. While many of the Winglies seem to be open to the idea of at least talking with humans on the Elder's request, the Bardell brothers are not. Imagine these two as a caricature of ideologues on whom hold on to a superiority complex that the Winglies are superior to humans and humans should bow to them. You can't blame them though. Their sister followed Maru's example and stepped out into the human world where she was killed by a human. Just like Winglies, humans are not perfect. The Bardell brothers begin to talk up a big game, but Rose calls their bluff, saying one who flaunts their power disappears when power truly appears. This is just a cute way of saying those who oftentimes flaunt their power or flaunt their strength as one of their big talking points are often the ones that hide in cowardice when any sort of challenge arises. The Elder fills us a little bit more in about the Divine Dragon. He was sealed up in the Mountain of Mortal Dragon northeast of Denningrad. Maru makes a comment to the Elder she wishes to be able to travel freely between the human world and the Wingly world. Knowing full well she will likely be the one to break this archaic code of the Winglies and bring the races together to live with the humans once more, he realizes now is not the time to talk about this as more pressing matters are at hand. The Elder opens up the gateway to the Wingly capital of Cadessa. This is the same capital from the cinematic flashback Rose had earlier where the Dragoons fought the Wingly leader Melbu Frama. More on him later. This invokes such a sense of adventure in me. This would be like finding the lost city of Atlantis, only to realize there was this giant battle that took place in it. An immense amount of blood was spilt upon its grounds. This is one thing the party comments on is the smell of blood. A lot of humans and Winglies died here after all. One thing I really did enjoy was the changing of the battle music here to fit the ancient nature of this place. It truly gives off this vibe as we are in a place meant to be forgotten through history. Making our way through Cadessa, Dart and company witness firsthand the technological advancements of the Wingly race. Their technology, or I guess magical capabilities, far surpass anything the humans could create. Up top, the capital of Cadessa is the Dragon Block Staff. Rose points out even with the staff, the Divine Dragon will not be a pushover. There is a reason the Divine Dragon was sealed away and not killed the first time around. The party also figures Lloyd is plotting something, and Dart asks Miranda about the moon object of Mille Sassu. But would you imagine it, Miranda is tight-lipped and simply stating she doesn't want to talk about it. After an arduous fight with the Guardian of the Staff, we acquire the Dragon Block Staff and make our way to the Wingly Forest. The fight with the Guardian is one hell of a fight. Not only does the staff heal itself when its HP is low, it has the ability to lower the defense of dragoons and dragoon attacks, effectively making them useless during this battle. The staff is meant to seal the powers of the dragon, so this does make sense. The Divine Dragon once again flies towards Deningrad, this time blowing the top off the Crystal Palace and leaving Deningrad in a devastated state. The Elder tries to warp us back to Deningrad, but fails as he's weak and unable to do so. Meru's parents and Garana appear to help out, sending us back to Deningrad. The city's ruined, buildings destroyed, and the once beautiful Crystal Palace of Deningrad is a complete mess. During this time, a scene shifts to Shanna, unsure of what's going on, questioning who she truly is, and unaware of what her power really is. Shanna makes her way to the throne room, only for the dragon to attack, and when she does, she once again loses control of her body, this time enacting a giant shield protecting everybody in the throne room from the devastating attacks of the Divine Dragon. We see this aura of light disappear as we make our way to the throne room. Miranda shows compassion to Shanna, eternally grateful she saved the Queen's life. Shanna begins to feel extremely guilty for the events of Celeste burning to the ground, realizing whatever this mysterious power is has likely had a hand in much of the devastation around her. Lloyd did want her. She was thrown in prison for a reason at the beginning of the game, but for what? Well, that's an answer we're going to have to find out later, but we do have the Dragon Block staff in our hands, so there's only one thing left to do. Make our way to the Mountain of Mortal Dragon and defeat the Divine Dragon once and for all. Dart tells Miranda she can stay since she has no obligation to go, but she snaps back she has a duty to fulfill because the Dragoon spirit chose her. She does somewhat redeem herself by stating she made a promise to Shanna to see this through, so she's at least warming up a little, and does show she at least has somewhat of a heart. The damage caused by the Divine Dragon was fairly minimal to the castle, most of what was left intact. The only thing it destroyed was the signet left in the castle. We'll learn more about these mysterious devices and how they function very, very soon. Dart and company climb to the top of the Mountain of Mortal Dragon and see Lloyd engaged in a fight against the Divine Dragon. It's a bit weird, but yes, Lloyd is actually struggling in a fight. Lloyd steps aside, letting us use the Dragon Block staff to nullify the Divine Dragon's magic. This fight can be a pain in the ass if you didn't prepare. Guard will also be extremely useful, as well as higher level additions. Dragoons are completely useless at this point because while the Dragon Block staff blocks the dragon's magic, it also blocks the dragoon's magic as well. One of the only things I did in this fight, Dragoon-wise, was use Albert's Rose Storm to apply some defense. Lloyd delivers the final blow, not just killing it, but capturing its soul and turning it into a Dragoon spirit, awakening him as the rightful owner of the Divine Dragon Dragoon spirit. Oh boy, his complex is about to get a lot bigger, isn't it? He simply calls it a prize. Lloyd begins to mock Albert, asking him what drove him to go on this journey. Was it the Moon Gem? Lovitz then disappears, and of course, we go to pursue him. After chasing him down the mountain, a fireball is hurled towards Dart, and Rose get knocked off a cliff. Rose is knocked unconscious this time and begins talking in her sleep, making a reference to the Black Monster, catching Dart off guard. He tries to piece together the connection between the Black Monster and the Moonchild, but is unable to do so. Eventually, Meru uses her wings to find them. Question: why couldn't the party just turn into dragoons and do the same thing? Why did it have to be Meru? She had to have some sort of usefulness in the party, I guess. Some sort of big character moment, right? So, I guess video game logic rears its ugly head once again. Dart knows Lloyd is after the moon objects and begins to question Miranda again about it. She decides since the fate of the world rests upon it, she's going to spill the beans. A scene flashes back to Deningrad and the Queen is in trouble. Lloyd has beaten us to the palace, kidnapping the Queen and taking her to the Tower of Flanvel where the Moon Mirror rests. We also get a flashback of Lloyd getting attacked by the Bardell brothers, they're attacking Wink, trying to kill her, but Lloyd once again saves her and gains her trust. This gets her to take him back to the castle to meet the Queen. The party learns that the Queen has been kidnapped and make their way back to the castle of Deningrad. It's here Miranda swears to the other Sacred Sisters she will bring back the Queen alive. But as we arrive at the Tower of Flanvel, another Wingley relic left behind by the Dragon campaign, the Queen is already extracting the Moon Mirror. With all 3 objects in Lloyd's possession, it's time we finally get a chance to fight him. The party is finally able to damage Lloyd. This fight can be annoying because Lloyd is able to one-shot someone if they turn into a Dragoon. So it's best to turn into a Dragoon once with level 1 and then just stop there. However, as Dart goes on to deliver the final blow to Lloyd, Wink jumps in and Dart slashes Wink's back, leaving a gash in her. It didn't kill her, but she was hurt pretty good. She still feels Lloyd is a good person and appears to have developed some deeper feelings for him, saying, "Please don't hurt him." That kind of happens when a man saves your life twice, I guess. Still though, I think it was pretty stupid for her to do. Wink came to tell us a man named Emperor Diaz stormed the castle, took Shanna, and demanded the moon objects along with Lloyd. Emperor Diaz was the human ruler during the Dragon campaign, leading the humans in the fight against the Winglies. He awaits us in Velweb, but before we make our way to Velweb, let's take a quick stop at Fort Madrid to get a couple of strong items such as a really great sword for Dart, and learn a little bit about Rose's past and her plan to marry Zieg. This was also the place where Diaz rallied the humans to fight against the Winglies in the event that started the Dragon campaign in the first place. Upon resting, a flashback ensues and Lloyd remembers a time he talked to Diaz. The Emperor wished to bring about the 108 species, to bring about the god, to bring the utopia to endiness. If only it was that simple, right? Velweb remains the base of where the Dragoons once stood, so it makes sense why Diaz would be here for historical reasons, right? Upon arriving, however, Shirley appears to tell us that the spirits of the past Dragoons were unable to move on due to their connection to the Death City of Mayfield somehow. We can't release them yet, but we'll be back to do so later. Diaz awaits us at the throne floating above him in the sky as Shanna is unconscious. He takes the moon objects and reveals his true intention. The god was not supposed to bring paradise, but destruction. It was the will of Soa to continue the cycle and start the world anew. He lied to Lloyd, and Lloyd took this as bad as well as you think he would. In this cutscene, Diaz takes his mask off, revealing himself to be Zieg, in what has to be the best voice acting we have heard from The Legend of Dragoon yet.
It's been a while. Rose, Dart.
Father?
In the beginning, there was nothingness. Soa planted the seed to the earth. This seed became the divine tree. Fruit formed from the tree, ripening and fell to earth, creating life. The 97th species, the Gigantos. The 99th species, the Minatos. Dragons, the 105th species. Humans, the 106th species. And Winglies, the 107th species. The 108th fruit was meant to be the Virage, the species that would usher in the god of destruction and reset the world. The Winglies learned of this fate and were not happy with it and sealed away the embryo by separating the flesh and its soul. The Virage embryo was taken away from the Winglies and placed in the sky into the moon that never sets. Yes, this is a giant Virage embryo meant to host the god of destruction. The soul, however, was locked in a crystal and kept by Melbu Frama, the Wingly dictator. Frama was able to draw unlimited power and create many Virage to do his bidding during the Dragon campaign. However, his eventual downfall was at the hands of Zieg and Kadessa. So if Zieg was the hero of the Dragon campaign, why is he a bad guy now? Who knows? Zieg plans on reuniting the soul of the god of destruction and the Virage embryo to bring about the god of destruction. Once Frama was destroyed in the Dragon campaign, his crystal broke and released the spirit of the god of destruction to wander the earth. Every 108 years, the Moonchild was born and the black monster would appear. Shanna is the Moonchild, and Rose Rose is the Black Monster. She tries to kill Shanna but fails. There is something poetic going on here, albeit being evil. For 10,000 years, Rose successfully fulfilled her duty. She didn't foresee Shanna having a twin sister. The baby she killed on the ship was Shanna's twin sister, the Princess of Mille Sassu. She didn't foresee Shanna having a twin sister. The baby she killed on the ship was her twin sister. She thought she'd killed the Moonchild, but failed. Even the most perfect plan wasn't 100% all of the time. Rose leaps into the air, trying to kill Shanna, but is blown away by Diaz. This comes off as cold, but Rose couldn't let the world be destroyed. She, despite having Shanna as a friend and getting to know Shanna, was still hell-bent on saving the world. And I both respect, applaud, look up to, and find myself extremely frustrated with Rose all at the same time. Talk about being loyal to your duty. It's revealed during the fight Zeke killed Melbu Frama but was petrified as we saw in the cinematic. Eventually the petrification spell wore off and Zeke found himself wandering around the world. He started a family and plotted his takeover. Dart's probably feeling a lot right now. His dad is evil, the whole reason for revenge, has been an ally who's been working with him the entire time. This would absolutely suck. Talk about having one giant existential crisis. Everything you thought you knew about your father and your companion has been completely uplifted. The goal was to always destroy the crystal. Unaware of this, this would cause the Moonchild to continuously reappear. Once Rose found out about the Moonchild, she took it upon herself to find a way to become immortal and kill the Moonchild every 108 years. Well, this answers a lot of mysteries as to why Shanna has a connection with the Virage and why Rose knows so much about the world and how things work. Imagine all the death and destruction Rose has had to endure her entire life. It's no wonder she comes off as cold. It's probably a coping mechanism for her to deal with some of the trauma she's had to inflict upon the world over these past 10,000 years. Zeke disappears with Shanna, thus ending Disc 3. Some time has passed since the events of Velweb, and the party finds themselves in the desert looking for the Wingly city of Ilara. Rose wishes to head to Ilara to try to figure out what to do next, feeling the burden of this bearing on her shoulders. After arriving in Ilara, Rose confronts Dart about being the Black Monster, and he says he's already solved his beef with the Black Monster. Sounds like Rose doesn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. The guard of the village tells Rose to go find Charles Frama, the sister of Melbu. Charles reveals the mood signets were created as a last-ditch attempt to stop the Moonchild from reaching the moon if all else failed. There are 5 signets in total, and only 3 of them are left. The first was destroyed in Cadessa during the Dragon campaign, and the other one was destroyed when the Divine Dragon attacked Deningrad. This leaves the last 3 in the Magic City of Aglis, the Lost City of Xenabatos, and the Death City of Mayfill. In order to destroy them, we need the moon objects. This was why Diaz wanted these so bad. Melbu and Charles didn't see eye to eye. Melbu wanted to draw power from the sphere in which the God of Destruction was kept, giving him power to rule over all other creatures on Endiness. She was warring against him being a dictator, but used the signets to weaken his power from the beginning to draw power from the God of Destruction. Melbu made the moon objects to destroy these signets. It really does seem like we are in a battle between 2 siblings going on here. It's also revealed that Charles gave Rose a choker that was able to make her live forever and stop aging. With our mission in place, we need to stop Tehashtel's hometown of Rogue. But before we can do so, the Winglies give us a proper send-off using their magic to teleport us to the home of the Gigantos, where we are going to need to go to Fletz and get the Queen Fury once again. Off in the distance, we can see Rogue and see the city of Aglis floating there. Rose reveals the Winglies would choose which Winglies were able to be born depending on their magical aptitude. Basically, if they weren't strong enough, they wouldn't be born. There's a level of eugenics clearly going on here. The laws in Xenobatos were also used to judge and control other species, making the Winglies a superior race. Melbu was a straight-up tyrant, and not to mention, as I said earlier, playing around with eugenics. Even in death, it was decided by the Winglies who got to pass on and who didn't, using the city of Mayfield. We can see the ocean split, as almost as if the city of Aglis is calling us to it. Before we go to the city, though, we do stop to talk to Martel, who has made her way to Rogue. It is here we can learn about her and finally give her all of the Stardust we've been collecting throughout the game, and learn what she wished to use it for. Her kid was sick, and she simply wanted to make him feel better. This was the wish she had decided to use all of the Stardust for. Kinda sweet if you ask me. She gives us the Vanishing Stone, which allows us to take on the hardest boss in the game. The city of Aglis pretty much exists underwater. The Wingly scientist here, Savin, wants to make us a strong weapon capable of helping us on our journey. So each member has to contribute courage to the stone. Depending on the answers chosen here will depend on how strong it is. Basically, you want to aim to use this every battle so it can become an infinite item. This was kinda popular with games back in the day, finding a reason for your characters to fight. It was just a weird decision here to put this of all places, as it just prolongs this dungeon. After acquiring the item known as the Psychedelic Bomb, it's time to get to the Signet. The Kraken that was supposed to protect it has been controlled by Zeke. Guess we're fighting this thing. Apparently, there is also a glitch that causes you to have to repeat the boss fight if you transform into a Dragoon. This is entirely up to you, but it happened to me once and I had to restart. I know this is a problem with emulators, which is how I played the game, but it also apparently appeared on the original hardware as well, specifically with the PlayStation 2 and any subsequent online releases that Sony has done as well. So just something to keep in mind. I was eventually able to use the Dragoon spirits in order to defeat the fight, but I did have to refight the Kraken all over again, which was kind of a royal pain in the ass. Zeke succeeds in destroying the Signet in Aglis, and every creature the scientist Savin has made passes away along with him, and the city begins to be destroyed. Using the teleporter, it is time to head to Xenabatos. Savin sent a creature called Kulin to help us, a flying dragon-like thing that acts as the airship of this game. I decided to take on Faust, and you bet your ass I used Game Shark cheats to get the items needed to do this. I wasn't going to grind for gold for hours just to beat him for this retrospective. So I got a shit ton of gold and bought the armor that avoids his attacks, and even with that fight, it was still a pain in the ass. Faust is hidden under the Tower of Flanvel, which was shot down during the Dragon campaign. Faust acted as a general to Frama and rivaled his magic, which is why the Vanishing Stone exists. It was created to halt his power so he wouldn't overthrow Frama. Beating Faust doesn't offer up any scenes, just the satisfaction of being the biggest badass in all of Endiness. While we're here, let's head to Velweb and release the remaining Dragoons who were left here from the Dragon campaign. In the first tower, we meet Kazis, who basically is a serial killer keeping dolls of everyone he has killed. Rose comments she never was too keen on this room and comments if she came back to judge him. Rose understands why his soul is still here and clings to this world to satisfy his lust for killing. After a fight with Kazis, we can finally set him free. Next up is Belzac. That is Belzac. LOL, what a name. Belzac has kids under his care and promises he would bring the kids freedom from Wingly control. This is what connects his soul to the world. He hasn't realized everyone died and moved on. After a fight with Belzac, we can finally allow him to pass on. It's also revealed he was devastated by the death of Shirley, as he was unable to save her. This also had conflicted him and made it so he couldn't move on. We saw this as much in the Dragon campaign cinematic, right? Shirley was the whole reason he continued to be a Dragoon in the first place. Damia is an interesting duck. We don't see her in the cutscene, but she is a 15-year-old girl and a mermaid at that. She was bullied because she was a mermaid, but had grown to have a close friendship with Rose and the other Dragoons. Damia is oblivious that she's been killed and doesn't want to be left alone. She feels abandoned thanks to the death of the other Dragoons. Rose reassures her the other Dragoons are waiting for her on the other side upon her defeat. Souville, the owner of the original Jade Dragoon spirit, is afraid of fading into nothingness. My boy is afraid of there being nothing after death, going through an existential crisis. After Rose fights him, he's able to come to terms with it and move on. I enjoy these small little scenes. It humanizes these characters and gives us small little subplots to these characters. In a way, it's closure to Rose's story and finally being able to say goodbye to her old friends. Once all four have been defeated, Shirley disappears and joins her friends on the other side. It's off to Xenobatos, the city of law, to destroy the next signet. Most of Xenobatos is run by robots making the most ridiculous laws you could possibly imagine. These laws were often used as ways to set up humans at a disadvantage and make it easier for the Winglies to rule over them. Some of the most ridiculous laws were made, and even Rose comments at the process kinda being ridiculous. Though I do find it funny during this process, we can pretty much reduce it down to an assembly line. This kind of feels like our world in some ways. In order to move on here though, we need to change a few laws for the main platform in order to permit humans to use it. This will take us to the signet. We can also change some other laws to get rid of random encounters and some other things just for fun. It's a nice little touch this game adds and just makes it a bit comical. You can rid random encounters in this area. Making our way to the signet, you guessed it, Zeke destroys it, and it's now time we head to the city of Mayfield. Using the teleporter there, we can make our way to Mayfield, the Death City. The final signet lies within the Death City Mayfield, the Wingly city where the souls were collected during the reign of Melbu Frama. Souls alike would be forced to gather and remain here even in death, and the people of Endiness were not able to move on under the tyranny brought by Melbu Frama. Kulan is unable to travel to the city of Mayfield due to the intense energy of souls in Mayfield, so we'll need to use the transporter. But the transportation to Mayfield has been cut off. Lucky for us, we know how to change the laws here, so Mayfield just opens up for access to us right away. Entering the city, Rose is shocked to find out the city is still fully functional. This was one of the cities they destroyed, likely to end the cycle of souls ending up here and who could and could not move on after death. Mayfield is pretty much a straightforward dungeon, but a few boss fights do await us. The dragons Firebrand, Regal, and the Divine Dragon are also trapped here, unable to move on, likely tied to this world out of spite for failing to defeat the humans. Dragoons are prideful creatures, so to lose to a race they consider inferior would be a blow to these egos. These fights are completely optional, with the Divine Dragon being the hardest of them all. By defeating them, Dart and company are able to help them move on from this world and rest in peace. The most tragic event to come out of Mayfield was learning that even Lavitz was unable to move on, still connected to this world. Even in death, Lavitz remained loyal to his friends, unable to pass on due to the immense amount of worry he had for his friends. A loyal knight even in death. However, due to the nature of things and how they work in Mayfield, even that loyalty of his friends was weaponized. A demon named Zackwell possesses Lavitz, using him for his tool for his own bidding. After our fight with Zackwell, the persistent demon still possesses Lavitz. Dart and Lavitz exchange blows, with Lavitz knocking Dart's sword from his hand. In this last-ditch attempt to penetrate through Zackwell's clutches, Dart calls out to Lavitz, and this is his last act in the game. Lavitz impels himself with his spear through his chest, destroying Zackwell's device attached to his back, destroying the demon once and for all. After a couple of fist bumps and a heartfelt goodbye, Lavitz uses the remaining energy he has to open a passageway to the signet. With Zackwell defeated, it seems his dominion over Mayfield no longer exists, and the souls stuck here are finally able to move on from this world. Man, I love this scene. It would have been all too easy to just forget about Lavitz, save a bit of time, and come up with some other way to open this signet. This gives us closure to Lavitz's story and allows him an opportunity, even in death, to play his part in saving the world. These characters may be larger than life, but a moment like this shows how flawed they still are, making them resonate with us as the player. How often have you known someone who passed and worried about those who they've left behind? Not dying with the peace of mind things are going to be okay for them. A moment like this tugs at the heartstrings and tries to reassure us that those around us are going to be okay when we pass on. Zeeg is able to destroy the final signet using the moon mirror. Doing so causes the moon to crash to the ground directly into the divine tree. The birthing process of the god of destruction can finally begin. Zeeg wastes no time taking Shanna to the moon and starting the process, heralding in the god of destruction. Kulan flies towards the moon in a spectacle of CGI cinematics as a horde of Virage fly towards the party. Kulan manages to dodge them, but ultimately takes a blow and crashes into the moon, unable to function anymore. He is still living and remaining there during his last days on the moon. Damn, I actually kind of felt bad for him at this point. Upon entering the moon, a stream has been set up to start the process of creating God. Through the creation of the God, the world slowly begins to be poisoned. However, this process cannot be completed until the core and Shanna are united, so the party still has some time. Dart says the line of fate is in our hands, not the creator. The homeboy just said we are going to kill God, let's go. Perhaps what I enjoy of this dungeon the most is almost how it seems alien, otherworldly, though textual decisions and illusions. More on that though, this looks like something vastly different from what we've seen. There's even this part late in dungeon where TV monitors have been set up, something that might seem out of place, but the whole thing feels like a dream, a Matrix-like feel that they were clearly going for here shows us the perspective of this false reality. Eventually, the scenery of the moon becomes very familiar as environments turn to very similar places, even down to the music we've become accustomed to. The moon has begun to play mind tricks on our party members, making them wrestle with their past traumas they haven't been able to overcome yet. The first one we deal with is Miranda. Her father was a deadbeat, and this caused a great deal of stress on her mother. He was abusive and very often treated her mother like garbage because he couldn't hold down a job. This caused Miranda and her mother to live in poverty. Seeking a better life, her mother eventually left. It's revealed her mother wanted to take her with her, but her father wouldn't let it happen. Eventually, her mother left them behind and left her with her dad, as she ran off with another man. In the end, her mother did want to take her with her, but her dad wouldn't allow it. It doesn't make her mother any less of an asshole at this point, but it does show she still at least loved her daughter and cared enough about her to at least try to take her away, despite the poor circumstances. This is just horrible. I don't like how is this conclusion to Miranda's character? This probably is one of the weaker aspects of the game, and just Miranda, I'm going to say it, is a complete waste of a character. I'm sorry for all the Miranda fans out there, but I can't get behind this. This is the one character that doesn't feel like she's had any closing arc to her story whatsoever. Making her way into the image of Belle about 20 years ago in the past, Haschel sees a young girl run off into another area. If we follow Haschel, he recognizes her as his daughter Claire. She hates the discipline Haschel has put on her, and the constant pressure to follow in her father's footsteps to take over the rogue school was a lot for her to bear. She just wants to be a kid, but the constant pressure of Haschel putting that on her drove her to the wedge and the split between the two. As a kid, Claire seemed to have been possessed by a demon, an entity, or something, but whatever it was, I think we can surmise this being a manifestation of whatever punched that girl earlier on, knocking her out cold, and using the rogue martial arts as an act of aggression rather than for simply self-defense, or using restraint. Perhaps Haschel was able to defeat the demon by rescuing Claire as a kid, but the darkness still lingered in her heart. Making our way further into the moon, the party splits up. Dart and Rose once again are separated from the rest of the party. The rest of the party ends up what looks like ruins of the home of the Gigantos. Dole appears saving a child Kongo from the bandits near his home. It seems the humans who drew the Gigantos out of their home were the bandits in Tiburoa. Unfortunately, he really is the last of his species. Dole comments he wanted to bring peace for all species. This was the message that resonated with Kongo the most. These events led to Kongo to run off to the throne room and fight his brother to prove his strength to his brother Indora. Eventually, Kongo is able to overcome the trial, and the rest of the party looks for Dart and Rose. Rose perhaps is the most interesting because she's had so much death and regret It would have just been easier to make her regret something to do with the black monster and rehash old ideas. But the developers really thought outside the box and came up with something clever in a way to tie in her loss to Zieg. A flashback ensues of her and Zieg defeating the dragon to create her Dragoon Stone. It's in this place there was a small baby dragoon born. This creature was known as a vassal dragon. I used this term all the way back in our covering of Firebrand, but a vassal dragon is basically a dragon that dragoons can control. They are a lesser dragon than the ones that they use the Dragoon spirit of, which allows them to control them. This is also done, and according to it, depending on how many eyes the dragoons have, will let them know what rank the dragon is. Just some fun little lore about Legend of Dragoon I thought I would include here. Unfortunately though, continuously killing eventually drives the vassal dragon to become violent, and they no longer obey the dragoon. This shows the human side of Rose because she grew to care for her vassal dragon, even giving it the name Michael, and eventually having to kill it. She was hesitant to tell Dart its weakness, but finally gave in and told him what it was. Eventually the party is reunited and we can finally make our way to Kansas, through the throne room to talk to Dole. Albert wonders why he killed his father Carlo, and Dole admits he would have made a better king. And Dole saw the weakness inside of his own brother. He taxed the citizens of Serdio too high and was too soft for a king. However, Albert pointed out Carlo respected Dole and viewed him as a better leader. Carlo had hoped they would be able to rule together and make up for each other's weaknesses, but it seems Dole's ego had blinded him. Meru's is kind of the weakest in my opinion, but it's really challenging this old archaic idea and new ideas that she's adopted from the old world and defeating her patron deity, the Archangel. It's representative of her putting past her beliefs aside and standing up for what she believes in. It makes sense for her character, but eventually does just kind of tie up any loose ends with her character. It doesn't really do that very well in my opinion. Eventually, we make it to the room full of TVs and come across a room where the god of destruction is being born. Zieg awaits us and reclaims the red-eyed Dragoon spirit as his own. We now have to fight once again without Dart's Dragoon spirit. After Zieg falls, the stone doesn't go back to Dart, but recognizes Zieg as its rightful owner. But we learn that Zieg was possessed by the spirit of Melbu Frama. Upon his defeat in Cadessa, Melbu Frama was able to place his soul into the red-eyed Dragoon spirit. After Zieg had awakened it and tried to use his Dragoon spirit back in Neat when Rose attacked the village 18 years ago, this caused the spirit of Frama to be released and possess him. Frama figured if he couldn't control God, why not just become God? Lloyd, of all people, appears shouting there is no room for him in his utopia. With the Dragon Buster in hand and the Divine Dragoon Spirit, he challenges the newly formed Melbu Frama merged with the God of Destruction. Frama is able to deal the final blow to him, destroying Lloyd once and for all. As Lloyd passes on, the Dragon Buster sword becomes Rose's strongest weapon and Dart awakens the Divine Dragoon Spirit. This looks totally badass, by the way. They raise arms against Frama and are able to stop him. A couple of things I found here in the music in this section just very disappointing. It doesn't exude the energy of killing a god like other RPGs do. There was also some crazy symbolism going on here, showing cycles through the world as the whole birth process begins to happen. Eventually, we are able to win and the party makes their escape, but not before Frama tries one last attempt to gain the upper hand. A weak Zieg and Rose take on the task of destroying Melbu Frama, sacrificing themselves. Figuring 10,000 years has been enough for them to live, sacrificing themselves to let the others escape and save the world. We watch as the moon is destroyed and the party watches the embryo finally disappear. During the credit scene, we get a marathon of what the characters are up to. Haschel is teaching Congo in Rogue the secrets of his martial arts style. Charles is watering the plants. Miranda returns to Deningrad and takes her role up as a sacred sister once again. Meru and Garana are seen together in the real world, perhaps insinuating the relationships between the Wingly and the humans is ready to finally take its next step in allowing them to live together. Albert and Emil marry, and the two kingdoms unite. Dart and Shanna help rebuild Celeste. and at some point Dart pours Lovitz a glass of wine, set next to a picture having the drink he promised him they would have after the war was over. The end credit scene gives us a last scene of Zieg and Rose, or what appears to be Zieg and Rose, watching over the world as birds as their Dragoon spirits sit next to them. Are they watching over this new era of the world? Perhaps. Man, what an incredible game. I love The Legend of Dragoon. For all its flaws, from translation errors to some questionable design and padding issues, The Legend of Dragoon, despite all of this, is incredibly fun. Every time I play it, I am constantly reminded of why I enjoy it. I asked at the beginning of this video why The Legend of Dragoon, despite all these years, hasn't been forgotten. It's because there really isn't anything like it. The combat system has never been retried. It strives to not only create something unique, albeit being very flawed at some times, especially the system of the Dragoons. The Legend of Dragoon's world also feels wholly unique. It doesn't try to copy so much of the fantasy tropes. It was really trying to flesh out its own unique ideas and stories of its own through a unique setting and world building. While games like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, and Xenogears may have done this more effectively, people remember The Legend of Dragoon for standing out and creating a world and experience that is wholly unique to The Legend of Dragoon. It is for this reason I believe people still talk about the game today. It's a game that has a unique identity, and this plays a crucial part into why so many of us fondly remember The Legend of Dragoon to this day. I also just think a lot of us feel a connection to it because in many regards it was one of the very first RPGs we had ever played back in the day, and that had a lasting, profound effect. This is why so many continue to talk about its legacy and wanting to see it revived or brought back in some way, shape, or form, because it had such an impact on our childhood. It is a nostalgic thing, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I can see some of the criticisms some people may have towards the game for feeling repetitive or not being as good as fans tout it up to be, but that's what makes The Legend of Dragoon so special. It doesn't discredit it in any way, only helps it resonate with a dedicated, passionate fan base who is hell-bent on keeping its legacy alive. That said, shall we get into analyzing the mythology and symbolism of its story? I think it's due time. Like many works of fiction, The Legend of Dragoon borrows heavily from many works of mythology and history, using it to create its own world. So let's take a look at some of these myths and moments from history The Legend of Dragoon borrows from. Let's get a couple of obvious ones out of the way. The Divine Tree is an in-world representation of the Tree of Life, drawing heavily from the concepts of Yggdrasil. In The Legend of Dragoon, the Divine Tree is where all life came from. It ties nicely into many other religious versions of the Tree of Life. In The Legend of Dragoon, this references all life comes from the tree, and it's taken literally, as all 108 species come from the Divine Tree itself. While the tree is a physical in-game manifestation of this concept, the tree itself is also part of the Will of Soa, meaning all life is derived from the tree, though literal fruits can fall from it to bear life. This lines up with the idea of the Spirot from Kabbalah, the idea that the primordial man and how all souls are all part of Adam Kadmon, part of the divine. The tree is also a literal interpretation of the garden as well, bearing some resemblance to the Garden of Eden. The Virage embryo, the fruit that was to bear the 108 species, borrows a lot from the ways the forbidden fruit was used from the Tree of Knowledge. This gave the Winglies knowledge of the world's destruction, but was also the source of Melbu Frama's power, giving him godlike powers. This was likely why he fashioned himself to be a tyrant, the rightful ruler of the world. In turn, Melbu, once he lost power and the signets holding the Virage embryo Soa's soul was destroyed, he probably was just able to say to hell with it and figured if he couldn't govern the world, why not become one with the god of destruction and allow the creator's will to play out, playing the part of the vengeful god archetype. There is probably some demiurgic undertones going on here as well. Is demiurgic a word? I don't know, but we're rolling with it. There's also some imagery of the dragons giving the humans the power of the dragons through the use of the Dragoon stones, almost as if these stones were fashioned as a way to break free of humanity's clutches from Melbu Frama, who fashioned himself as a god king. If you know anything about Gnostic texts and their interpretations of the Garden of Eden and how Christ was a serpent meant to break humanity free from the shackles of the demiurge, you could even throw Rose into the equation and connect her to Satan. However, there isn't enough for me to definitively say Soa or Melbu for that reason themselves are fashioned from the demiurge or meant to represent the demiurge. It's more like elements of the demiurge may have inspired them or indirectly popped up during the Legend of Dragoon storytelling. Though I will say Melbu himself definitely fashioned himself as a god king with godlike powers, reflecting such figures as Gilgamesh and Nimrod from biblical and mythological texts. I'm almost certain Soa falls more in line, though, with the Hindu concept of samsara more than anything else, the infinite cycle of the birth, the destruction, and the rebirth of the universe. Running with these concepts, I think Melbu falls much more in line with Shiva the Destroyer, and his sister Charl falls more in line with Vishnu the Preserver, trying to bring about moksha, the Hindu word for liberation, a term used to be the ultimate goal in which an individual breaks free from samsara. The two siblings resemble much of the concepts of yin and yang as well, the anima and the animus. The yin and yang symbol represents chaos and order, with the feminine being tied to chaos and the masculine to order. Charl is the chaos trying to destroy the order set forth by the creator Soa, while Melbu is seeking to bring the order of Sor, or the will of Soa, to fruition. The red and purple birds also hint at Zeeg and Rose watching over the world, as this likely spells out some new cycle beginning. To how that would play out, we can only speculate, but Adam and Eve, Lif and Lifrasir, I'm probably butchering those Norse names, I am sorry, but this symbolism would also make sense. The races of the Legend of Dragoon are inspired by Nordic, Mesopotamian, and Judeo-Christian concepts. However, the race I want to focus on the most are the Winglies, and their specific ties to creation. The Winglies do have resemblance to elves from other works of Western fantasy. They live extremely long lives, a lifespanning of 1,000 years is not uncommon for elves, thus exceeding the life expectancy of humans. Like the elves, this gives Winglies a vast array of knowledge humans would be incapable of knowing due to the long lifespan of the Winglies. The Winglies also draw some parallels to the sons of God from Genesis 6 and the Book of Enoch, in that they enslaved humanity, felt they had dominion over humanity, and likely saw humans as an inferior species. I think to a degree, the Anunnaki from Sumerian mythology also played some sort of inspiration in the Winglies as well. Given too that they had unnatural powers, told stories of serpents, and had explanations of how celestial bodies were created, this connection also kind of makes sense. Hell, even the moon that makes a reference to this, with Marduk being the one to slay Tiamat, was creating the celestial bodies. There is a legend that suggests the moon may have not always been in the sky. Though I don't know how much credibility is in this, I'd put it into an interesting concept nonetheless to infer that the moon, as a celestial body, gave birth to the god of destruction. The last thing I really want to touch upon is the use of the word dragoon. The term dragoon has been used by the military forces across the world, with the earliest one I could find being the Spanish conquistadors during the Incan invasion. They were most notable for riding on horses and using lances in combat, but often dismounted the horses when they fought. This is probably why so much of fantasy portrays dragons as lancers. However, it is the etymology of the word in France I want to explore for the sake of this analysis. The French dragoons were known for carrying around a blunderbuss, which is a gun that was often referenced as a dragon. It was believed this was where they were given the name dragoons in the first place. Dragoons are oftentimes associated with packing around heavy artillery as well, so it's probably a bit of play on the word or this concept, considering in the Legend of Dragoon, all dragoons have heavy armor and are carrying around the power of a literal dragon with them. Send your foot soldiers in and then send in the dragoons and their dragons to take care of those pesky Winglies. One of the things many fans, myself included, wished would have happened was at the very least a continuation or a sequel to the Legend of Dragoon. Unfortunately, that never came to happen. As much as I would love to see a second entry, that possibility has pretty much died more or less over the years, but this doesn't stop fans from speculating where or what a sequel could have been. Let's have some fun and use some of the ideas I just laid out to theorycraft where the story could have gone. The easiest and most obvious answer would have been to travel back in time 11,000 years to the Dragon campaign and follow the events of Rose and her companions in their quest to stop Melbuframa the first time. While we know the ending, it could flesh out some of Rose's history a bit more and deliver some interesting perspective on her inner thoughts on becoming the Black Monster and ultimately the burden she had to carry such bloodshed on her hands to save the world from being destroyed, tying the game into the cutscene where she overlooks the cliff in Serdio and sees Firebrand rising out from the forest. If it were to have gone in true fashion and made a sequel, we could have also had the second game actually see the defeat of Soa and explore his origin a bit more. It wouldn't have been uncommon for the JRPGs to kill God. I mean, we kind of did it at the end of Legend of Dragoon already, but seeing how this time Japanese creators were heavily inspired by the Apocrypha, it wouldn't have been out of the question to destroy the Demiurge and bring in the Monad to mix things up. Also, bringing in the pantheon of other gods into the Legend of Dragoon's already rich lore would have been easy to do, and it just gets me exciting thinking about it. Let me know down below in the comment sections where you think a Legend of Dragoon sequel could have gone. Very curious to hear your thoughts. This playthrough of The Legend of Dragoon was one of the hardest I've had to do, because it required me to turn off my own nostalgia and look at it with a critical eye. While I can see some of the critiques many of those who are less fond of The Legend of Dragoon have, it still constantly reminded me why so many, myself included, consider The Legend of Dragoon such an amazing game. Its combat may not be the greatest, but it was ambitious and left a legacy of its own right, showing what turn-based was capable of becoming, paving the way for so many other RPGs to innovate on these mechanics. While the story can certainly feel generic at times, copying from many of the same tropes as its counterparts, it's The Legend of Dragoon's larger-than-life but relatable, well-written characters that compel this wonderful journey forward. I also really appreciate the time and effort that went into crafting the Legend of Dragoon's world. It was able to use world building to its advantage and create a world that feels distinctly unique to the world of Endiness. It borrowed heavily from other contemporary fantasy works, but crafted those concepts and races uniquely in its own world. As much as I'd love to see a remake of The Legend of Dragoon, or a continuation of its story through a sequel or a prequel, I can't help but almost feel it's best left in the past. While a fresh coat of paint may put eyes on it for new fans, The Legend of Dragoon has already found its audience who will ensure it's never forgotten. It's an honor to be a part of this fan base, and to do my part in ensuring the legacy of The Legend of Dragoon is always remembered. I suspect this isn't the last time I will revisit The Legend of Dragoon either, as it still remains one of my comfort food games, and likely always will. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel, sharing the video, and giving it a like. You can support the channel by becoming a YouTube member or heading over to Patreon for gameplay updates, your name in the credits, and an end video Q&A. Hey guys, thank you for tuning in and being so patient with this video. It is 2 weeks late, but if you're here towards the end of this video, just know there has been a lot of things that had happened last month that really procrastinated this video getting out. I didn't foresee. Regardless to say, I had a lot of family issues going on, particularly from the medical side, but everything is great, everything's doing well, and I'm just glad to get this out. I am going to talk just a little bit about some things you can expect going on kind of for the rest of this year. I am currently working my way through Lost Odyssey, which I am hoping to have out at the end of October, but that may just end up being in November. And then I will have December, for sure, Xenogears coming out to finish the year. And then next year, I will have another little update video talking about specifically what you guys can expect, or maybe for those of you who have obviously made it this far, you're my avid watchers, the people who check out every single one of my videos and watch them from beginning to end. So I'll probably maybe just throw something out here and let you guys kind of know, hey, here's what's going on alongside of a community post. But I did just want to say thank you for being patient. Thank you for watching to the end of this video. And this was a fun experience because The Legend of Dragoon was one of my favorite, or is one of my favorite Japanese RPGs. It was one of my first Japanese RPGs, And it kind of ends an era, right? Because I've covered Chrono Cross, which we will revisit at some point. I've covered Final Fantasy IX. I've covered Kingdom Hearts. And I've covered The Legend of Dragoon. And all four of these games had played a crucial role into my love for Japanese RPGs as a whole. So to finally tie a nice little bow on all four of these games and have all four of these games out of the way, it truly is it's a unique experience, and I look forward to being able to cover many more games and things to come. One thing I will say too, I am looking to cover some games that aren't going to be Japanese RPGs. I also want to say I am just kind of done covering games that are safe. And one thing I will say, I've always tried to keep these videos as apolitical as possible, right? But when you analyze video game stories, sometimes that is specifically hard. So I have specifically gone out of my way to not cover games that get cover a lot of political things, but in doing so, I'm missing out on a lot of games I do want to play. Games such as BioShock, Deus Ex, and some other, games like Disco Elysium, for instance, is another game I would like to visit. These are all games at some point I'd like to cover, but, they are more of a political tone. I will do my best to not get too heavy into the weeds of those, but bring up those themes as they do come available, and kind of my interpretation of them moving forward, especially covering a game like BioShock, which is a critique of Ayn Rand and objectivism to begin with. It's going to be extremely difficult. But I'll probably end up talking a little bit more about this later on in an update video, kind of for everybody to see. And one last thing before we go. If you are someone who came from Resident Arch channel, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for checking out the channel and subscribing. I had a lot of fun over there with Mike and Kaysen and Final Fan TV talking about Final Fantasy IX, which is an incredible video game. And it's just another one of those memories that I'm continually just going to associate with Final Fantasy IX, as probably one of the main reasons it always will resonate as my favorite Final Fantasy, just because there's so many amazing memories that's already attached to it, and more are just continually being created for that game. So thanks again, guys. Mike, Kaysen, thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure being on that podcast with you, Final Fan TV, if any of you have made it this far. So that said, stay safe out there. Stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.